So when you make a promise, does the law actually force you to keep it? It's a fascinating question, right? Today, we're diving into that legal puzzle by looking at one of the most famous cases in contract law, Coombe versus Coombe, and its brilliant metaphor, the shield and the sword.
You'd think it's simple. A promise is a promise, end of story. But, in the legal world, things are rarely that straightforward. This very question is what makes our story today so compelling. Can you really sue someone just because they broke a casual promise? Let's find out.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we need a real story. And this one, like so many legal dramas, kicks off when a relationship ends. Let's meet Mr. and Mrs. Coombe.
All right, so here's the setup. As they're getting divorced, Mr. Coombe makes a promise to pay his ex-wife £100 a year. Now, based on that promise, Mrs. Coombe decides not to go through the courts to get a formal, legally binding maintenance payment. But here's the kicker. Mr. Coombe never pays, not a single cent. So, years later, Mrs. Coombe takes him to court to get the money she was promised. Seems like a pretty open and shut case, doesn't it?
But, and this is a big but, it wasn't that simple at all. The court immediately hit a major snag. You see, Mr. Coombe's promise, all on its own, wasn't actually a contract. There was a critical piece of the puzzle missing, something essential that turns a simple promise into a real, enforceable deal.
In that missing ingredient, it's a huge concept in law called consideration. This is really the bedrock of any contract. The easiest way to think about it is as the price of the promise. It's the this for that. For a contract to actually exist, both sides have to get something of value. It has to be a two-way street.
Let's break this down. It's really the difference between a bargain and a gift, right? In a normal contract, I might say, I'll pay you $100 in return for you painting my fence. See? That's a two-way bargain. But in this case, Mr. Coombe promised to pay £100 in return for nothing. Mrs. Coombe didn't promise to do anything in exchange. His promise was basically a one-way street, a gift. And you can't sue someone for failing to give you a gift they promised.
So, no contract, no case, right? Game over for Mrs. Coombe? Well, not so fast. Her lawyers had a pretty clever argument, a kind of legal ace up their sleeve. They tried to use a special fairness principle known as promissory estoppel.
Now, promissory estoppel, this is a really cool idea. It basically says that, hey, if someone makes you a clear promise and you reasonably rely on it, and you'd be hurt if they backed out, the law might just step in and estop them, that is, stop them from going back on their word. It's a tool the courts can use to prevent a really unfair outcome.
So, let's run the Coombe case through the estoppel checklist, shall we? Was there a clear promise? Check. Mr. Coombe promised the money. Did Mrs. Coombe rely on it? Yep, she didn't go to court because of it. Would she suffer a detriment? For sure, she was out the money. And would it be unfair to let him off the hook? It absolutely seems that way. On the surface, this looks like a perfect fit.
Okay, so it seems like a slam dunk for Mrs. Coombe, right? Wrong. This is where the case delivers its legendary twist, the part that lawyers still talk about today. The judge, a brilliant man named Lord Denning, made a crucial distinction. He said promissory estoppel is a shield, not a sword. And it all boils down to this one critical question. Can you use this doctrine as a weapon, as a sword? Can you march into court and use it as your main reason for suing someone, to create a cause of action where there wasn't one before, which is exactly what Mrs. Coombe was trying to do?
And the court's answer was a huge, resounding no. You can't use promissory estoppel as a sword to start a fight. You can only use it as a shield to defend yourself. For instance, if your landlord promises not to collect rent for 6 months and then tries to sue you for it, you could use estoppel as a shield to protect yourself, but you can't use it to create a claim out of thin air.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Lord Denning himself put it perfectly. He said the principle, quote, does not create new causes of action where none existed before. It's just there to stop someone from being unfair. Since Mrs. Coombe didn't have a contract to begin with, estoppel couldn't just magically invent one for her.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What's the lasting impact of Coombe versus Coombe? Well, while the result might feel a little harsh from Mrs. Coombe, the court's decision was vital. It stopped this fairness principle from completely blowing up the foundations of contract law.
All right, so let's wrap this up. The key points from this whole affair are pretty clear. First, a simple promise isn't a contract without that two-way exchange we called consideration. And second, the big one, promissory estoppel is a defensive tool. It's a shield to protect you, not a sword to attack someone else. Mrs. Combe was trying to use it as a sword, and that's exactly why her case ultimately had to fail.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? This case draws a really sharp line between what's morally right and what's legally enforceable. It makes you ask, think about all the promises in your own life, with friends, with family. How many of those are built purely on trust, with no legal sword or shield to back them up? It's a powerful reminder that not every broken promise is a broken law.